Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at AI, and specifically some recent events that are pretty much shaking up the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to be looking at a specific company called Deepseek and their model, R1.
Yeah.
So,
Very interesting stuff. Deepseek, they're a startup backed by a Chinese hedge fund.
right.
And they're claiming that they've kind of beaten OpenAI at their own game, so that their R1 model is not only as good
Okay.
as OpenAI's best, but it's even better.
Really?
And they did it all with significantly less resources.
Like, how much less are we talking about here?
We're talking $6 million
Wow.
compared to the massive energy consumption of
Right.
these large AI models.
So it's like a real David and Goliath story.
Exactly.
They brought a slingshot to a gunfight and won.
Absolutely.
So how do they manage to do this? What's the secret sauce?
Efficiency, that's their focus.
Okay.
You know, OpenAI's dominance has really relied on them having these vast resources and training their models on just tons and tons and tons of data.
Right.
So DeepSeek's approach is really challenging that assumption.
Oh.
They're showing that you don't need a giant energy grid at your disposal to achieve incredible results with AI.
So for the average person out there listening, does that mean that we can all just build a supercomputer in our basement and start making our own AI?
Well, maybe not quite yet.
Okay.
But it's certainly getting a lot easier
Okay.
to access these powerful AI models.
Okay.
What Deepseek has done is they made their model open weight,
Open weight.
which means that they're essentially sharing the recipe
Oh.
for this amazing AI dish.
Okay.
So anyone with the right kitchen,
I like that analogy.
in this case, the hardware,
Right.
can download and run the model themselves.
Oh, wow.
It's breaking down those barriers to entry that have existed for so long.
But hold on a sec. Running these massive AI models, even if we have the recipe, isn't that still super expensive? Like, my gaming PC can barely handle the latest video games.
Well, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is DeepSeek actually demonstrated running their model on a Raspberry Pi.
What?
Now, granted, it was the smaller 14 billion parameter model,
Okay.
and it was slow, more like a proof of concept.
Okay.
But they do have a more powerful 671 billion parameter model that you can run on just a few 3090 GPUs.
Hold on. I'm getting lost in the numbers here.
Yeah.
What are these parameters you keep mentioning?
So parameters are essentially the ingredients in our AI recipe analogy.
Okay.
The more parameters, the more complex and potentially capable the model becomes.
Okay.
But running all those parameters takes a lot of processing power,
Right.
which usually means more energy consumption and more cost.
So it sounds like Deepseek figured out how to make an amazing AI dish with fewer ingredients than everyone else.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're saying.
And they're saying it's even tastier than what the big companies are cooking up.
That is what they are claiming. They say that their model, the R1 model, outperforms OpenAI on certain tasks.
Okay.
But, and this is important, those are their claims based on their own testing.
Right.
Independent verification is still needed
Of course.
to really confirm how powerful this R1 model really is.
So you're saying there's a chance they might be exaggerating a little bit.
There's always a chance, right?
Yeah.
It's good to be a little skeptical.
Right, of course.
But even if their model is just as good as OpenAI's, it's still a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
They're completely changing the rules of the game.
Yeah, they are.
It makes you wonder if we even need these massive energy-hungry models that we've seen so far to achieve these groundbreaking results.
That's a good point.
DeepSeek's approach suggests that there might be a more sustainable, more accessible path forward.
Right.
It's a really interesting development.
You mentioned earlier that you could run this more powerful model,
Yeah.
the 671 billion parameter one on a couple of 3090 GPUs. But those are still pretty pricey, right?
True, but they're a lot cheaper than trying to access OpenAI's services,
Okay.
which can get really expensive
Yeah,
and really restrictive.
I see.
So it starts to look a lot more appealing,
Yeah.
especially when you consider the fact that it could potentially run on those up-and-coming ARM and RISC-V PCs that everyone's been talking about.
Right. I've heard those are supposed to be more energy efficient than traditional computers.
Yeah, that's the big appeal.
But can they really handle the demands of running these powerful AI models?
That's the interesting part. We're seeing AMD and Intel both release open source drivers that work really well on those platforms.
Oh, wow.
So if Nvidia jumps on board, it could be a real turning point.
Okay.
Imagine powerful AI running on devices that are much more affordable and consume way less energy.
It's crazy to think that just a few years ago, AI seemed like something straight out of science fiction. And now it feels like it's on the verge of becoming mainstream.
And that's what makes DeepSeek's approach so fascinating.
Yeah.
They're not just developing AI models, they're challenging the way we think about accessing and utilizing AI technology.
Yeah. It's a really fundamental shift.
It really is.
So let's recap here. DeepSeek claims to have this model that's not only more accessible, but potentially better than OpenAI's. They're doing all this with fewer resources. They're shaking up the industry. But there's still a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely. It begs the question,
Yeah.
with this shift in power dynamics, with AI becoming more readily available, what are the long-term implications?
That's a big question.
It's something we all need to be thinking about.
Definitely gives us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Let's dive deeper into the potential consequences
Sounds good.
of this AI revolution after a quick break.
All right, so we've established that DeepSeek is kind of like shaking things up in the AI world.
Yeah.
But let's take a step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture here.
What happens when this kind of AI power becomes widely available?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of layers to that.
Right.
But on the one hand, it's incredibly exciting, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. A world where like small businesses, independent researchers, even artists
Right?
have access to this kind of AI. It
Yeah.
could just spark this unbelievable wave of innovation
Yeah.
and creativity that we've never seen before.
I see that. But what about the flip side of that coin?
Sure.
Doesn't this also open the door for misuse?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a valid concern.
You know, it feels like we're already kind of struggling with things like deepfakes
Uh-huh.
and AI-generated content.
Absolutely.
Won't this just make things worse?
It's very likely.
Yeah.
You know, as this technology becomes more accessible, we're probably going to see those challenges just get amplified.
Right?
Think about it. Misinformation, bias, and algorithms,
Oh, yeah.
even the creation of these incredibly convincing scams, like it's going to get harder and harder
Yeah.
to figure out what's real and what's fake.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It is.
What about the economic impact of all of this?
Right.
Automation's always been kind of a hot topic,
Yeah.
but it feels like AI is going to accelerate that process in a big way.
Uh-huh.
Are we looking at like widespread job displacement here?
It's a possibility. It's not as simple as like robots taking over, though.
Okay.
It's more of a shift
Okay.
in the types of skills that are going to be in demand.
Right.
So jobs that require like repetitive tasks or data analysis, they're likely to be affected.
Yeah.
But there will be new opportunities
Okay.
in fields that require creativity, critical thinking,
Right.
human interaction.
No, so it's not just about losing jobs.
Right.
It's about adapting to
Absolutely.
and acquiring new
You
skills.
got it.
It sounds like we're all going to have to be pretty flexible
Yeah.
to keep up with the pace of change.
That's the key, being flexible and adaptable.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure that AI is used responsibly, ethically?
Well, I think it all starts with education.
Okay.
You know, we need to demystify AI,
Yeah.
make it accessible to everyone.
Not just the experts.
Exactly, not just the tech experts. The more people that understand it, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about how it's developed and how it's used.
What about regulation? Does
Right.
that play a role here?
Absolutely. We need frameworks
Okay.
that encourage responsible innovation,
Right.
but also safeguard against potential harm.
So it's kind of a balancing act
It is. It's a very delicate balancing act.
between fostering growth but also mitigating risk.
Exactly.
That's a tough one.
It is. It's going to be a complex process, but it's crucial to making sure that AI is developed and used in a way that aligns with our values.
It sounds like we almost need like a whole new set of rules for the AI age.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
But these rules can't just be imposed, right?
Right.
From the top down.
Yeah.
We need a collaborative approach here. It has to involve policymakers, researchers, developers, and the public.
Everyone's got to be on board.
Exactly. It's a conversation that needs to happen at all levels of society.
Okay, so let's bring it back to DeepSeek for a sec.
Okay.
They're kind of shaking up the establishment here.
Yeah.
Is this just like a blip on the radar, or are they a sign of things to come?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think their approach is significant.
Okay.
You know, they're highlighting the possibility of achieving these really impressive results without relying on the bigger is better mentality,
Right.
you know, that's been so dominant
Yeah.
in the AI industry.
They're proving that wrong in a way.
Yeah, their focus on efficiency and accessibility could have a lasting impact on how AI develops.
Almost like they're democratizing AI,
Yeah,
making it available to the masses.
that's a good way to put it.
But what does that mean for the future?
It's exciting and challenging, right? It
Yeah.
means that the power of AI is no longer just in the hands of a few. It means that more people will have the ability to develop
Right.
and deploy these technologies.
For better or for worse.
Exactly.
So the future of AI is looking pretty unpredictable right now.
It certainly is. We need to be prepared for the ride.
You've definitely given us a lot to think about here.
Well, hopefully it's been helpful.
We've talked about like the potential benefits, the risks of this new era of AI,
Yeah.
and how Deepseek is really changing the game.
Yeah, the fascinating development.
But let's get back to like the technical side of things for a bit.
Okay.
You mentioned that Deepseek claims that their R1 model outperforms OpenAI on certain benchmarks.
Right.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah.
Like, what can this model actually do?
So,
Okay, so let's get down to like the nuts and bolts here.
right.
Deepseek is making some pretty bold claims about their model.
Yeah.
What are we talking about in terms of like actual capabilities?
Yeah.
What can this thing do?
Well, based on their own testing, Deepseek says that their 671 billion parameter R1 model is actually beating OpenAI on some pretty key benchmarks.
Wow.
And remember, they achieve this with way fewer computational resources
Right.
and a fraction of the financial investment.
So it's not just about being like cheaper and more accessible.
Right.
They're saying it's straight up a better performing model.
That's what they're claiming.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is a big claim.
Yeah.
But it is important to remember that these are Deepseek's claims based on their own internal benchmarks.
Right.
You know, we need to see some independent verification
Of course, yeah.
and more testing to really confirm how R1 stacks up against the competition.
So a healthy dose of skepticism is probably warranted.
Always a good idea.
But even if R1 just performs like on par with OpenAI's models, isn't that still a significant shift?
I think it is.
Like it feels like it would completely change the landscape of AI development.
I think you're right. It challenges that whole notion that only these massive corporations with tons of money can play in the big leagues of AI.
Right.
You know, if smaller companies and independent researchers can achieve those same results with fewer resources,
Yeah.
it could lead to a much more diverse and innovative AI ecosystem.
And it all ties back to what we were talking about before with
Mhm.
those ARM and RISC PCs.
Right.
If these more affordable and energy efficient platforms can handle running these powerful AI models,
Yeah.
it feels like a real turning point.
It's an exciting prospect, isn't it?
It is.
A world where powerful AI isn't limited to these expensive data centers,
Yeah.
but can be run locally on all sorts of devices.
Yeah.
I mean, it could open up so many new applications and possibilities.
Yeah. I keep thinking back to that example of DeepSeek running their model, even that smaller version,
Yeah,
on a Raspberry Pi.
right.
It almost felt symbolic, like a glimpse into this future where AI is just everywhere.
Yeah,
It's a really powerful image.
it is. And it raises some really interesting questions, too.
Like
What happens when these powerful AI tools become available to so many more people?
Yeah.
How will it impact research, development, innovation?
And then beyond the technical aspects, there were all those societal implications that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Like it's exciting to think about the potential benefits,
Right.
but we also have to be mindful of those potential risks, you know?
Absolutely.
It feels like we're entering uncharted territory
Well,
here.
we are. And navigating this new landscape is going to require a lot of careful consideration,
Yeah.
thoughtful discussion,
Right.
a willingness to adapt to a world that's changing really, really quickly.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into this world of AI
Okay.
and DeepSeek's kind of disruptive entry into this space,
Mm-hmm.
what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the main thing is that the AI landscape is changing dramatically, and it's happening really fast.
Right.
Powerful models are becoming more accessible, more affordable,
Right.
which means that we have incredible opportunities, but also potential challenges.
It's a double-edged sword.
It really is. It's up to all of us to stay informed, to engage in these conversations, and to help shape a future where AI is used responsibly and benefits everyone.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us and guiding us through this really complex and fascinating topic.
My pleasure. It's been a great conversation.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to another deep dive. Stay curious.